This is your end of day market recap for Thursday, January 29th. And we've got only one more trading day of the month to go. That's it tomorrow. And a lot of earnings out of the way. I'll go through some of the earnings reports. We'll talk about some of these moves today. Uh, Very interesting as well to see what names kind of came back too. But definitely a tale of two markets going on in the technology space, which we've known about for some time. Risk disclaimer in front of you. Please read that full risk disclaimer there. But everything that we're going through in this video is for information purposes only. So look at how many things like up and down. Number one, I would say that there was a pretty good comeback. Sorry, let me just get this volume off of here. There we go. Pretty good comeback overall for the indices from that swoop lower. The Qs finished down six tenths of a percentage point. I think that they were down what two? I think they were down close to 2%. I don't think they were down 2%, but the small caps came back too from the lows. Everything kind of like butted up against some resistance as the day progressed. But the small caps finished basically positive for the day. This was one of more of those higher risk, higher beta sell-offs today. RSP was mainly like right around flat for a good portion of the day. I think on the worst of the worst, the equally weighted S&P index was down like 2 or 3 tenths of a percentage point. So it just kind of shows you that there was a lot there, and the breadth wasn't bad for the day. I think it was like around 40%, a little more than 40% up volume when I sent out my midday note today. So this was more of a higher beta type sell off. And I think a couple things, like if you're looking for, people always want reasons. I think you had a couple things going on. I think that you had Micron, not my, excuse me, not Micron, Microsoft selling off pretty decently. A lot of the whole software space got absolutely crushed. It was down at one point. The IGV ETF was down about 6% today. So remember just a couple days ago, all those that big software bounce. Holy cow! That was just a bounce, and it's a reminder too. Maybe that's the first chart that we'll start with, and then we can talk about the metals as well. But let's get to let's bring up the software chart here. So just bear with me 1 second as I switch this over. All right, so there you go, and there was a VPOC that was taken out down here. But if you like, you could see how well this played out if you use the value areas that we use. This is the MarketWebs value areas. But here was the move down recently. Wow, look at the volume, by the way, in the IGV ETF. Here's the bounce that everybody was going crazy about because there was some, and you should be, because it just kind of shows you that the market can act pretty crazy for a couple days in terms of like what you saw in Cloudflare, which I went over in yesterday's video. I didn't see what happened to Cloudflare today, but it basically gave back the whole thing. So these are, when you look at some of these things and say, okay, I'm in this to see for a bounce or for a trade, right? This thing went from basically about 172, 173 up to up well over $210. I mean, that is a huge move in a couple days. And look at it, give it all back. That is a tremendous move. Yesterday it was down 10%. Today down more than 2.5%. But off the lows, just an amazing move. And if you sat, there's two things to kind of learn from that. If you went bargain hunting and you said, okay, these things, if you looked at the ratio between SMH and IGV, you've said, okay, maybe I went out bargain hunting. But if you did, ringing the register was important. And then the other thing was, if you weren't bargain hunting, if you missed the trade in software, it was best to not do anything. Here's this chart, IGV versus SMH, right? Here's the bounce. Right, this thing got to an RSI of about like a 15, so you got to bounce, right? Burned off those oversold levels and right back down and taking out that basically with a vengeance. Amazing, So again, it's one of those things where this is a downtrend. Anything could bounce in a downtrend, but it's very difficult to turn the page, to turn the trend and go higher. V recoveries can happen. They're not frequent, right? They're not frequent. in terms of that. Which brings us to the next thing. I got a lot of heat because I saw this the other day, and I said I think some of these things, not all, because Meta did well today, but I said some of these are basically just they're positioning into earnings where you saw this big bounce in Microsoft. Again, notice where this stopped. Right around the bottom of the value area for the month, also the 200-day moving average. So again, you could make money on both sides of this type of stuff because you got a bounce here. Notice it did finish off the lows and it did bounce pretty nicely off the bottom of the yearly value area. So some people don't like to say that oh, it's not technical, but where these things kind of land, of course, events like earnings are going to drive moves, but you can really kind of use the value areas to say, okay, well, I have a very important or significant level of support to trade off of. That's exactly where Microsoft got down to today, which was 420. That's the support to basically keep in mind. But do I think it's going to be an easy move for Microsoft from here on in? No, I don't. I think it's going to be tough. Um, but that's just me. What I thought was impressive today was the semiconductors, and I traded these. I traded the SMH ETF. I didn't hold it for as long as I should have. Um, whoops, what did I do? Let's go back here. All right. So look at this pullback. All right. Perfectly into the value area for the week. Right. So decent move down. Notice it's kind of trailing off here a little bit. Right. And you're probably thinking like, oh well, Sandisk is up decently. By the way, it's off the highs. So again, you have to remember that this stock has already made a big move. But Sandisk, right, even though it's up decently, it's not moving the SMH ETF because the SMA, and by the way, and here's what that 1 hour value area looks like that we just looked at. But it's not in this ETF. It's also not in the Qs. It's not in any semi ETF. It's because SanDisk was a spinoff and is still it's not included yet in any of these ETFs. So that's why it's not going to pull it. Um, and that's why the Qs aren't really rallying, even though I think Western Digital last I checked was up decently too. Wow, Western Digital a little bit all over the place. But remember, STX did this the other night, and then really got going. So pay attention to maybe what they say in the earnings call. The one thing I would say is these names are up a lot, and they're really extended, which brings us to the next extended area of the market. Let's talk a little bit about gold and silver. Look at that. Look at the sell off in gold today and the bounce back too. So like again, you could day trade the hell out of these things right now if you want to because they are moving like crazy. I can't believe that candle in gold. It is still holding way above the 5 period moving average. It keeps saying I am not dead yet. Same thing with the silver. Silver comes all the way back down to where it was trading a couple days ago and manages to rally pretty decently off of that. Let's look at a couple other ETFs. So I know a lot of people are calling for the top and trying to short silver here. You got to be patient with some of these things. Sometimes it doesn't, it takes a little while, and I would watch this XME ETF. I got out of these things and I actually put on not as much of a position that I had before, but I just said I don't want to be left out, and I'll use my sell rules. If this breaks the 20-day moving average, then I'll be out of it. But I was a little bit too cute with saying on this reversal bar that I got out of it. And who knows? I may have been right initially. We'll see. And I think really this is due for some consolidation. It absolutely is. And then we'll kind of see. I don't think that the trend is necessarily over here. I think it does need some consolidation, which brings us to the next to the next big move. Copper finished up about 5% for the day, nowhere near the high of the day, but still up 5% for the day. We could look at a couple of these copper charts. SCCO is up 4.9%. But again, these things have been on a big run. Look at FCX was all the way up to almost $70, still holding the trend. Again, maybe if it kind of so one thing I always say in these videos is that just because something looks like a reversal candle or looks like a horrible toppy candle, if it doesn't lose this 5 period moving average, you're essentially safe, right? You're basically okay. So I think those are the biggest things to that happened today, between the metals and the software space. I would also, I forgot to go over the indices, but look at where we found support today. And I tweeted this out. I said, hey, look at this trying to bounce here right down at the bottom of the value area. And believe it or not, SPY was only down 20 basis points and back above the 5-day moving average. I mean, these are really whippy moves. And I would say this too, just to kind of add a little bit of my thought into this, is that I think that I don't know if it's a problem in liquidity, why you're seeing these moves like this, where all of a sudden just the bottom falls out, um and that happens for a couple hours, and then it basically, you need to regroup. um but here's the cues. I mean, this is straight selling for what, a good hour and a half, and then finally, we turned. And I would say too, like, you could use the 5 period moving average on a 5-minute chart. You could use it on an hourly chart. You could use it on a daily chart. But really, what you want to pay attention to when we're falling like this, that the sellers are in control until price gets back above the five period moving average. Now, it tried to do this here, by the way, right on support. You see where it tried to fight back. But whenever there's a VPOC like this where price hits it, right, it becomes a battle of the of the demand of the buyers that may be there versus what's going on with the selling pressure. So it's like a tug of war. In this sense right here, the sellers won out for basically another half hour. And then we got back above the 5-day moving average, and grinded higher, and then had a nice end of day uh, ramp up there, as I believe it was OpenAI maybe make another $50 billion in financing. I can't believe some of this stuff, but it is what it is. It's helping drive markets because there's a big question mark in terms of where that funding is going to come from. So I think it was Amazon who said that they're going to possibly fund OpenAI for $50 billion, which again is crazy to me, but hey, it is what it is. All right, guys, that's it. I'll leave it there for now. Have a great night. See you tomorrow.